A lot of parents think that puberty starts when the big obvious things happen. First period, a deeper voice, a big growth spurt. But usually that's not actually the beginning. What often happens first are the quieter changes: body odor, skin changes, growth spurts, hair starting to appear, discharge, erections, mood shifts, wanting more privacy. And that's usually where it starts. And because those early signs can seem small to adults, families often get caught off guard. And after more than 30 years of working in sex ed and sexual health, this is one of the patterns that I see over and over again. Good parents thinking that they've got more time, and then their child notices something first and nobody's explained it yet. And that's when confusion can turn into embarrassment really quickly. So in this video, I want to walk you through what usually changes first, the mistake that makes this harder than it needs to be, and the easiest way to talk about it without doing one big awkward puberty talk. Because if you know what's coming next, it's much easier to stay calm, be ahead, and stay askable. One of the biggest reasons families get caught off guard is that parents are waiting for puberty changes. But early puberty often looks pretty ordinary, and that's why it gets missed. It can look like your child needs deodorant because they're getting a bit smelly. It could be greasier hair and having to wash their hair more often, or pimples starting, or they've suddenly outgrown another pair of shoes and you only bought them 3 months ago. It can also look like hair appearing under the arms or around the genitals, bigger feelings, or wanting more privacy. And nothing about that looks like the big movie version of puberty or the puberty talk. But to a child, it can feel really big, especially if no one's even mentioned it or those changes to them. And this is where I think adults often get it wrong, because we assume kids will ask if they're confused. And look, a lot of autistic kids won't. They notice, they wonder, and they keep it to themselves and they fill in the blanks themselves. But when we're talking about neurodivergent kids, sometimes they're filling in the blanks with myths or inaccurate information. So in a minute, I'm going to walk you through the body changes parents most often miss at the start, because once you know those, this whole conversation gets much easier. One of the first things parents often notice is body odor, and that can start earlier than people expect. And sometimes it's also that first clue that hormones are shifting. Then there's the skin changes: greasier skin, greasier hair, pimples, and things just feeling a bit different. And again, it's not a dramatic, sudden, big thing to notice, but it's definitely the start of change. Hair growth is another one, under the arms, around the genitals, sometimes just a little bit at first. And sometimes that's one of the first visible signs. What I notice with hair change is that often what happens with kids is they start wanting to have private showers, or they're not streaking through the house naked. And if you're suddenly sitting there going, oh, little Johnny hasn't streaked down the hallway for a while, could be because little Johnny's actually growing some pubic hair and he's feeling a little bit more private and shy. Now, for kids who have a uterus, vaginal discharge starts before a first period. And that's a really important one to explain ahead of time, because if nobody's mentioned it, it can feel a bit strange or worrying. You know, a child might feel something is wrong when it's actually completely normal. And the thing is, vaginal discharge, it's just the vagina keeping itself clean. And it's already doing it. It starts in kids when they're young. But it changes as they get closer to puberty. And that's because of part of the menstrual cycle with ovulation and eggs and conception and stuff. Now, for kids with a penis, erections can become a lot more common. And if no one's explained that beforehand, it can feel confusing or embarrassing, especially because, it can seem random. Erections can happen at moments when it's not appropriate. So if we can explain things beforehand, it can make a huge difference. Kids just worry a lot less. And then, of course, there's the changes that parents are more likely to recognize straight away: breast development, periods, voice changes, growth spurts, and then body hair, if you get to see it. Those tend to be the ones that parents expect. And then there's also the emotional changes too. Bigger feelings, they might be feeling more sensitive. They might be more self-conscious, might be wanting more privacy. Common complaint I hear from parents is that their child has just become revolting. They're grumpy, they're not happy, they're just not the usual child. They're a bit more antagonistic. And that's usually that sign that puberty's starting. So puberty, it's not just about what the body's doing, it's also about what the child starts noticing about their body. And one thing I've learned both professionally and personally as an autistic ADHD parent myself is that kids don't need every detail all at once, but they do need enough information so that normal body changes don't feel scary. And that leads to the mistake I see all the time. The mistake is waiting until the change is obvious before talking about it. By then, your child may already have noticed it, already feel awkward about it, and already have come up with their own explanation. And that's a bit parents often don't realise. And that's why I say a lot of puberty stress comes from the surprise of it, not from puberty itself. And look, I've seen that over and over again in families. The body change itself is normal, but what makes it stressful is not knowing what's happening. So waiting until puberty is obvious is often too late to prevent that worry for your child. And also with neurodivergent kids, the more they're prepared, the more accepting they're going to be of the changes that are happening. So it's never too late to start, obviously, but it's often too late to stop that surprise if something happens before you talk about it. And surprise, that's often what turns a normal change into a scary one. Now, next I want to talk about why some kids need much more preparation than others, because this is where a lot of parents misread what their child actually needs. Some kids need more preparation than others, and I really want to stress this. That doesn't mean that they're behind. It just means that they need a different kind of lead in. Some kids are fine with a quick explanation, but other kids, they need more warning, more repetition, more detail, more time to process, and more chances to come back to it later on. And that's a very normal difference. So if your child doesn't cope well with unpredictability, if they get anxious about change, or they think very literally, or need more processing time, body changes can feel much bigger when they arrive out of nowhere. And that's something I'm always thinking about in my work and also in real life as a parent myself. The actual change itself might be normal, but the surprise of it can still feel really huge for your child. So if your child needs more preparation, the answer is not less information. It's better information, earlier, calmer, more concrete, and in smaller pieces. And that's usually what helps. And that's exactly why I don't recommend one big puberty talk. I really don't think this needs to be one big talk. For most families, that's actually the hardest way to do it. Puberty, the talk, convos work much better as small conversations over time. You might say, for the next few years, your body's going to start changing. That happens to everyone. And I'll keep explaining things as they come up. That kind of sentence is simple, it's calm, and it doesn't make the topic feel huge. It just opens a door. Or you might say, sometimes, before the bigger puberty changes happen, kids notice things like they get smelly in the armpit, they've got to wash their hair more often, they might be getting pimples, or they might be noticing discharge down there. Again, we're keeping it very simple, and we're normalising it. You're just helping them expect what's coming. You could also say something like, one day you might notice your body smells different, or you get hair in some new places, or you start getting pimples on your face. These are all normal signs that your body is growing. Or, if it's relevant, explain erections or vaginal discharge just as matter-of-factly. You don't need some perfect script. You just need clear, calm language. And that kind of language does a few things really well. Gives your kid a map, reduces surprise for them, and makes the topic feel normal and lets them know that this is safe to talk about with you. And that is how you become askable, not by delivering one perfect speech, but by making the topic feel open enough that your child can keep coming back. And in a second, I'll give you the simplest line to use if you feel like you've already left this too late. So if you feel behind, don't panic. You do not need to catch up in one go. You just need to start. So a simple sentence you could use is, the body's going to change over time, and I want you to know you can always ask me about it. That's it. Let them know, and let them know they can talk to you about it. It's a start. And later on, you can then start talking about the different changes, body odor, skin changes, hair growth, maybe periods, erections, or vaginal discharge, just one layer at a time. And that's how parents stay calmer, and that's how kids stay informed. And that's how you build askability without making this feel huge or overwhelming. Puberty gets a lot easier when adults stop waiting for the big obvious moment and start preparing for the smaller changes that usually come first. And that's what helps the most. It's not about perfection, it's about preparation. And your autistic, ADHD, and neurodivergent child, they don't need a perfect puberty talk. What they actually need is reliable information before confusion turns into shame or fear. And that's what makes the biggest difference. And really, if there's one thing I want you to take from this, from all my years in this work and from lived experience as an autistic ADHD myself and a parent, it's that a lot of puberty stress, it actually comes from the surprise of it, not from puberty itself. And that's the piece I really want you as a parent to understand. So start earlier than you think you need to. Keep it simple. Say a little bit at a time and let your child see that this is a topic that they can bring to you, because that is how you stay askable.